The heat in the training yard pressed down like a punishing weight, the kind that turned sweat into a second skin. Captain Arya Vance stood at the center of the open area, a battered clipboard tucked under one arm, her other hand resting loosely on her hip. Around her, the platoon milled about in loose formation, still catching their breath from the morning's drills. Combat vests half open, boots caked with dust, rifles slung casually over shoulders. This was the hour when discipline sagged and the wolves among them sniffed for weakness. That was when Sergeant First Class Kane struck. He strode into the center like he owned it, broad shoulders rolling under the weight of his arrogance, his voice cutting through the murmur like a serrated blade. "Hey, Vance," he called, pitching his tone loud enough for every soldier in earshot to turn their heads. "Nice ink. What is it? A souvenir from your last beach vacation." The laughter was instant, harsh, unfiltered, the kind that didn't bother to hide its teeth. Arya didn't flinch. She'd been expecting this. Ever since she'd arrived on base 2 weeks ago, Kane had been circling her like a shark, testing for cracks. She turned slowly to face him, letting her eyes drift over his frame, squared stance, hands loose at his sides, mouth curled in a smirk that dripped condescension. "It's a falcon," she said evenly, "and it's not your business." Kane stepped closer, closing the space between them until she could smell the faint tang of sweat and gun oil. His eyes dipped deliberately to her forearm, with a tattoo, a black and ink silhouette of a falcon diving, wings swept back in a perfect arc, curled just above her wrist. "Not my business?" He chuckled, the sound low and poisonous. "You're on my training field, Vance. Everything you bring here is my business. And that," he jabbed a finger toward the ink, "isn't just any falcon. That's a Falcon Zero mark. And there's no way in hell you earned it." The air shifted. Conversations around them stopped mid-word. Arya felt the eyes on her, dozens of them, soldiers waiting for her to rise or fall. She kept her voice level. "You sure about that, Sergeant?" Kane's smirk widened. "Positive. That tattoo isn't something you just pick up at a corner shop. You either served in Falcon Zero or you didn't. And I know everyone who ever did. You're not one of them." So he tilted his head, the smirk sharpening into a sneer. "What's the story? Fake ink to make yourself look dangerous? Or just trying to impress the brass?" Another ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. This time it was sharper, crueler. Arya let the silence draw tight. She knew the rules of this game. Whoever spoke next would set the tone. But Kane didn't give a chance. He reached out suddenly, fingers brushing her arm without permission, tilting it so the sunlight caught the intricate lines of the falcon's wings. His touch was a deliberate violation, his grin smug. "I've seen the real ones," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're worn into the skin, faded from years in the field. Yours is too clean, too pretty. Hell, the ink's barely aged. It's a knockoff." The humiliation was calculated. In the rigid hierarchy of this place, being called a fraud in front of your peers wasn't just an insult. It was a stain that clung. She jerked her arm back, her voice clipped. "Keep your hands off me." "Or what?" Kane stepped even closer, his voice a low taunt now. "You gonna sick your pet falcon on me?" The crowd chuckled again, but there was a tension under it, that hushed anticipation before a fight. Arya's pulse thudded in her ears, but she kept her stance loose. She didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her temper flare. Instead, she said very quietly, "If you're so certain it's fake, prove it." That did it. Kane's eyes lit with the thrill of the kill. He straightened, raising his voice so it carried across the yard. "All right, troops. Captain Vance here says she's earned the mark of Falcon Zero. But me? I think she's just a poser with a tattoo gun and a wild imagination. So let's hear it. Should we give her a chance to prove me wrong?" The shout that followed was a mix of jeers and half-hearted support, but the weight of opinion was against her. Kane knew it. He basked in it. "Thought so," he said. "So, Captain, tell us, where do you really get it?" Arya didn't answer, not because she didn't have one, but because the real answer wasn't for them to hear. The mark wasn't just ink. It was a ghost from a place she'd sworn never to name. Kane mistook her silence for surrender. "That's what I thought," he said, his voice laced with mock pity. "Next time, Vance, Maybe pick a tattoo you can actually back up. Now! The rest of his words died on his tongue. The yard's gate had swung open, and a wave of stillness rolled through the assembled soldiers. Conversations halted mid-breath. Boots shuffled into neater lines. Even Kane's posture faltered, because the man who stepped into the training field wasn't just any officer. It was Colonel Marcus Reeve. He walked with the easy authority of someone who'd seen every battlefield worth fighting on, and walked away. His uniform was immaculate, his boots dustless despite the grit in the air, his eyes scanning the field with a sharpness that seemed to cut the sunlight. He should have looked past her. She was just one more officer among many. But the instant his gaze landed on Arya, he stopped dead. The murmurs began. Short, sharp, nervous. Reeve didn't acknowledge them. He crossed the yard in a straight line, his boots striking the packed earth with measured, unhurried steps. His eyes never left her. Arya felt something cold curl in her gut. She had never met the man before, she was certain of it, but his stare felt like recognition. He stopped 2 feet away. No greeting, no salute, just silence. Then, without a word, he reached down and began rolling up his left sleeve. The sunlight hit his forearm, catching the black ink etched into his skin. A falcon, diving, wings swept back in the exact same arc as hers. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. Every feather, every curve, every faint scar where the ink met old wounds. Gasps broke from the crowd. Kane's smirk evaporated. Reeve's gaze flicked briefly to Kane, a look so sharp it cut the sergeant's bravado to ribbons, before returning to Arya. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the yard. We need to talk. Now! If you are enjoying this story, please subscribe to support the channel. The training yard still felt frozen in the shadow of Colonel Marcus Reeve's arrival. Even the wind seemed to have stopped, as though the base itself was holding its breath. Arya stood where she was, clipboard forgotten at her side, the thudding of her heartbeat drowning out every background sound. She had endured stares before, suspicion, doubt, challenge, but this was different. Reeve's gaze wasn't the cold, clinical assessment of an officer judging subordinates. It was searching. The identical falcon tattoo on his forearm felt like a brand on her own skin. Her mind wanted to rebel against it, to insist that it was coincidence, imitation, something explainable, because the alternative meant her life, her service. Her memories were not as solid as she thought. The colonel broke the silence first. Captain Vance. It was a statement, not a greeting. Sir, walk with me. It wasn't a request. He turned without another word and began striding toward the administrative wing at the far end of the compound. The crowd instinctively parted, soldiers stepping back as though giving space to an incoming storm. Arya moved to follow, but not before her gaze flicked to Kane. His expression was a twisted blend of confusion and something else, irritation, maybe even fear. The smugness from moments earlier was gone, replaced with the wary look of a man who had just realized he might have picked a fight with the wrong person. She kept walking. Inside the admin wing, the air was cooler, filtered through humming vents. The hallways were sterile and quiet, lined with closed doors and framed commendations. Reeve didn't slow until they reached a secure-looking briefing room. Reinforced door, keypad locked, no windows. He keyed in a code, stepped inside, and gestured for her to follow. The moment she crossed the threshold, he closed the door behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than the raucous training yard had moments ago. Then he turned the lock. Arya's instincts prickled. The colonel wasn't a large man in the way Kane was. Not all brawn and swagger, but his presence filled the room. Years of command had carved sharp lines into his face, and his eyes were the kind that had learned to see through lies before they were even spoken. He didn't sit. Neither did she. "Show me your arm," he said. She hesitated, then slowly rolled back her sleeve, exposing the falcon tattoo to the dim overhead light. Reeve stepped closer, his gaze fixed on the ink. He wasn't just looking. He was studying it, as if the design itself might answer a question he'd been carrying for years. "Where did you get it?" His tone was even, but there was something underneath, something almost urgent. "It's personal," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Personal doesn't cover it, Captain. That design, Exactly that design has only ever been worn by members of a unit called Falcon Zero. She met his eyes. I've never served in any unit by that name. Reeves' jaw flexed. That's impossible. With respect, sir, I think I'd remember. He gave a sharp, humorless laugh, stepping back just enough to pace once across the small space. Do you think I'm mistaken? I think you're making assumptions based on something you don't understand, she countered. His eyes snapped back to hers, and for a moment the room felt even smaller. Captain, Falcon Zero wasn't just some special ops outfit you could stumble into. It was off the books. No official record, no public acknowledgement. The only proof it existed is on the skin of the people who were in it. He tapped his own forearm. And there were exactly 13 of us. Aria's voice was calm, but her pulse was anything but. Then you miscounted. Reeves studied her in silence for a long moment. Then he reached into his breast pocket and withdrew a small, worn envelope. He slid a single photograph out and placed it on the table between them. It was old, colors faded, edges curling. A group of soldiers stood in front of what looked like a blown-out compound, dust and debris swirling around them. There were no visible unit patches, just hardened faces and gear that looked like it had been through hell. Reeve tapped one face in the middle row. She leaned in. Her stomach flipped. It was her, not someone who looked vaguely similar. Not a resemblance you could explain away with shared bone structure or common hair color. Her, down to the small scar under her right eyebrow. The same eyes, the same set of her jaw. But the photo's date stamp was over a decade ago. She swallowed. That's not me. It's not. His voice was almost mocking, but beneath it she sensed tension, like he didn't actually want to believe it either. Funny, because she has your face, your scar, and that same tattoo. Arya shook her head, forcing herself to meet his stare. Sir, I've never been in that place, and I've never met those people. I don't know what you're trying to pull. I'm not pulling anything. He stepped closer again, lowering his voice. The woman in that photo disappeared during Falcon Zero's final mission. Officially, she was killed in action, but there was never a body. Now you're standing in front of me, wearing her mark. You want me to believe that's coincidence. The air between them felt thick, as if the truth, whatever it was, had weight. Arya forced her voice steady. Sir, with all due respect, I don't have answers for you. I got this tattoo years ago, from someone who told me it represented loyalty and survival. I didn't know it belonged to some classified unit. Who? She hesitated. Who gave it to you, Captain? He pressed. Her mind flashed back to a dimly lit parlor in a back alley overseas, the quiet hum of the needle, the woman who had done the work saying almost nothing except, wear it well. Someday you'll need it. She had no intention of telling Reeve that. Not yet. That's personal, she said again. Reeve studied her for another long beat, then slid the photograph back into the envelope. He pocketed it without a word, but his eyes never left her face. You're dismissed, he said finally. But, Captain! He paused at the door, looking back at her. Stay away from Sergeant Kane. And if anyone asks about the tattoo, you say nothing. She frowned. Why? Because if I'm right, he said, you're already in danger. And if I'm wrong, he shook his head, you're in even more. He opened the door and stepped out, leaving her alone in the briefing room, the hum of the air vent suddenly deafening. She stood there for a long moment, trying to slow her breathing. In the space of 10 minutes, her world had tilted. She didn't know what Falcon Zero was. She didn't know why a decorated colonel wore the same mark as her. And she didn't know why seeing that photo, seeing herself in a place she had never been, made something deep in her chest ache with a strange, unplaceable familiarity. But she did know one thing. Kane wasn't going to stop pushing. And now, neither was Reeve. The door to the SCIF shut behind them with a muted thud, followed by the mechanical snap of the lock sliding into place. Captain Arya Vance had been in secure facilities before, but this one felt different. Heavier somehow. The air almost weighted. The walls were a dull, non-reflective gray, padded not for comfort, but for security. Every sound was swallowed. There was no clock on the wall, no window, no way to tell if the world outside was still turning. Colonel Marcus Reeve walked straight to the rectangular table in the center of the room, and set down a slim black folder. He didn't speak at first, didn't sit. He just looked at her, not like he was studying an opponent, but like he was comparing her to a memory he wasn't sure he could trust. Finally, he said, "Sit down." She did, keeping her posture erect, her hands flat against her thighs. He remained standing, the folder still closed between them. "I want you to tell me right now where you got that tattoo." Her voice came out cooler than she felt. "I already told you, sir. It's personal." "Personal doesn't exist in here," he replied sharply, one hand tapping the table. "Not when it comes to that tattoo. That mark isn't just some unit crest you pick up at a gift shop. It's the insignia of Falcon Zero." She didn't blink. "Never heard of them." "That's because you weren't supposed to. We were off the books. We didn't exist. And every member was handpicked. I know every one of them. You aren't on the list." The way he said we wasn't casual. "Then maybe I just like the design," she said, trying to keep her tone even. Reeve stepped closer, both palms now flat on the table, his shadow cutting across her. "I don't believe in coincidences, Captain. Not with something like this. That mark was given in a back room, under conditions no outsider ever saw. It was earned, not bought." Arya forced herself not to shift in her chair. "I got it years ago. That's all you need to know." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "If you think that's all I will know, you're underestimating me." Then, without warning, he opened the folder. A photograph slid out onto the table. Her breath hitched before she even realized it had. The photo was faded, the colors sun-bleached with age, but the details were unmistakable. A group of soldiers in battered gear, standing in front of skeletal remains of what had once been a building. Dust hung in the air. Their faces were hard, unflinching, the kind of faces forged in fire and silence. Reeve tapped one of them, and Arya's world tilted. The woman in the picture was her. Not similar, not vaguely resembling her. Her exact face. Same cheekbones, same scar under the right brow, same falcon tattoo on the forearm. But the date stamped in the corner? 12 years ago. "That's not me," she said automatically, her throat dry. "Then tell me who it is," he countered. She swallowed. "I don't know." "You expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to believe the truth." He stared at her for a long moment before sliding another sheet across the table. This time it wasn't a photo. It was a printed still from what looked like helmet cam footage. It showed the same woman, her double, crouched beside a door, weapon at the ready, the falcon tattoo stark against dusty skin. Arya's voice was low. "Where did this come from?" "Falcon Zero's last mission," Reeve said. His voice had dropped too, but it wasn't soft, it was weighted. "We went in for extraction and data recovery. We got neither. What we got instead was a collapse, a list of the dead, and her, missing, presumed gone." "You said you knew every member," she said slowly. "I did," he replied. "I knew her. Or at least, I thought I did. And now you're standing here wearing her mark." She tried to force logic into the edges of the conversation. "So what? She had my face, my scar. People look alike all the time." He cut her off. "Not like this. Not with the same blood type, the same height to the centimeter, and now." He gestured her arm. "The same ink, placed in the exact same position down to the millimeter. That's not just resemblance. That's replication." A prickling unease crawled up her spine. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me exactly who gave you that tattoo." Memories flashed. A dim shop in an unnamed alley, a needle-steady buzz, a woman with callous hands who worked in silence until she'd whispered just 7 words. "Wear it well. Someday you'll need it." She shook her head. "I can't." "Can't or won't." She didn't answer. Reeve straightened, jaw tight, then reached into the folder again. This time he produced a small plastic evidence bag. Inside were 2 dog tags, scuffed and dull from wear. The name stamped into them was clear. "Vance A." She stared. "Those aren't mine. They were recovered from that last mission site," he said. "The same op where she disappeared. No body, just these. And now, 12 years later, you show up with her face, her scar, her tattoo, and her name. Arya didn't look away. You're saying I'm her. I'm saying either you are her or someone made you be her. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. He finally slid the folder shut. Here's what's going to happen, Captain. You will not speak to anyone about this conversation. You will not answer questions about the tattoo. And you will stay away from Sergeant Kane. Her brow furrowed. Why Kane? Because he's not stupid. And if he figures out what I suspect, he'll try to use it, either to discredit you or to flush out whatever truth you're hiding. She bristled. I'm not hiding. Don't lie to me, he said flatly. If I can see the gaps, so can others. The difference is, I'm not trying to destroy you. She studied him. Then what are you trying to do? For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not sympathy exactly, but a kind of grim understanding. Figure out whether you're an asset or a liability. He unlocked the door, holding it open for her. Dismissed. Arya stepped into the hall, the cooler air of the corridor feeling almost foreign after the suffocating stillness of the room. She took 3 steps before Reeves' voice stopped her. Captain? She turned. Until I tell you otherwise, he said, trust no one, not even yourself. The door shut between them with a quiet finality. Afternoons on base were supposed to be a metronome. Briefings, paperwork, chow, range, repetition, until muscle and mind fell into step. Today the rhythm was wrong. The air had a charge to it, as if the morning spectacle had ionized the corridors. Conversations ended when Arya walked by. Boots hesitated. Laughter thinned out and died mid-breath. She kept her gaze forward and her pace measured. Clipboard tucked like a shield against her ribs. Sleeve tugged just far enough to hide the falcon. The training yard was already raked clean, neat as a stage photo. No scuffed circle where Kane had made a ring of humiliation. No trace of the moment everything had tilted. Only sun on metal and the smell of CLP and dust. In her office, she shut the door gentler than she wanted to and slid the deadbolt. The room was the same as ever. Gunmetal desk, file cabinet with a drawer that squeaked, line of regulations on a shelf like rows of obedient soldiers. Familiar. Safe. Lies. She woke the terminal. The base interface blinked up in military gray, tidy as a shaved head. She skipped past memos and inventories and went straight for her personnel file. It unfolded under her fingertips. Enlistment, OCS, duty stations, commendations that read like someone else's bio written in the passive voice. Everything correct. Too correct. Arya scrolled back 12 years, the year that suddenly mattered because Colonel Reeve had set fire to it. On paper she'd been civilian then. College classes, clinic hours, a sprained wrist from a bike crash, taxes filed late. A boring season of an ordinary life. She opened the metadata. Dates and edits usually stacked like neat plates. This was polished empty. 3 months compressed into a single system normalization entry with no human name attached. The audit log that should have read, like a breadcrumb trail read, like an erased whiteboard. The absence was louder than a scream. She tried a side door. Training servers, after-action reports, expense PDFs that no one reads unless finance is angry. She searched Falcon. Nothing. Falcon. Nothing. F0 with a 0. The cursor spun, then coughed up a handful of files with footer code. F0-12 Delta, buried where only a board auditor would ever look. The visible text was banal. Fuel receipts, per diem tallies, hotel tax notes. But the code repeated like a tattoo inside the filing cabinet. See annex, it said. There was no annex. Arya leaned back until her chair squeaked, the sound small and too human in the humming quiet. The falcon on her arm itched like it had nerves. She pushed her sleeve up and looked at it. The dive, the swept wings, the line weight where the needle had slowed and where it had chased breath. She'd always thought of it as hers. Now it felt like a password she didn't know how to use. A soft knock. She shut the browser and stood, face ready, posture precise. A private first class, barely shaving, clutched a stack of range safety rosters. Ma'am, Sergeant First Class Kane asked me to deliver these for your signature. Set them there, she said. The kid obeyed, eyes fixed on a spot somewhere over her shoulder. As he turned to go, he hesitated. The way a dog does when it knows there's food on the counter and a rule against it. Speak. Arya said, not unkind. He swallowed. People are saying, that the thing this morning was like staged for attention. I don't think that, ma'am. Thank you for the delivery, she said. The door closed on his relief. In the middle of the stack, tucked like a joke, lay a single page, a photocopied eagle, beak warped, talons cartoonish. Under it, Kane's sharp handwriting. Pick a species you earned. Arya filed in the bottom drawer, without tearing it or feeding it to Shredder. She would not let him choreograph her reactions. Her terminal chimed. High priority. The window that opened and belonged to any base system she knew. Plain font, no sender, no header, just words that looked like they'd slipped through the walls. We know who you are. Stay silent or vanish. The cursor blinked once. Coordinates appeared. Latitude, longitude, a time, 2300. The window closed itself like an eye. Adrenaline spiked, then narrowed into focus. If this was a prank, it was an expensive one. If it wasn't, then someone who knew about Falcon Zero wanted her alone off schedule, at a place they didn't name, because they didn't have to. She powered down her personal phone and slid it into the hollow behind the bottom drawer's back panel. She opened a local text editor not connected to the network, typed F0-12, Delta/dog tags /helmet cam /locket /2300, and then deleted it all. Writing felt like saying out loud, and she didn't know who listened to thoughts in rooms like this. The door opened without a knock. Kane leaned on the jamb like he was posing for a poster about bad decisions. He didn't look at the rosters. He looked at her sleeve. Afternoon, Captain, he said, voice leisure slow. Figure out what bird you're wearing yet? I brought crayons if you need help. Do you have business, Sergeant? Arya asked. She kept her voice level. If she gave him an angle, he would set the pry bar there. Integrity check, he said. Strolling in, he let the door drift half closed, so the corridor noise thinned. Our lives, your leadership, you understand. We bleed together. We should know who's actually earned their ink. She stood. You're in my office without an invitation. He tapped one finger on her desk, a little tattoo of insolence. Sometimes authority forgets us alone. She walked to the door and pulled it wide. 2 specialists passed and did a synchronized double take. If you got paperwork, leave it. Otherwise, you're blocking traffic. Kane's smile didn't reach his eyes. You know what I hate most? Tourists in uniforms. You said that this morning. She said, try new material. He leaned in close enough that she caught the ghost of coffee. Men died under that bird. Then carry them, she said, soft and knife clean. Stop dragging them into hallways for applause. The line hit and she saw it. A micro flinch, the twitch when a nerve you. Didn't know his raw gets touched. He stepped back, mask sliding into place, and left without another word. The specialist pretended not to have heard anything. People always pretend. Arya shut the door and pressed her palm to the metal until the cool bit her skin. Her pulse shook and then steadied. She considered marching straight to Reeve. She considered pretending none of it had happened. Instead, she did something simple and survivable. She went to chow at 1,800 with a platoon and ate like a person who has appetite. She walked the barracks at 1,900 and corrected a 19-year-old's grip with patience and kindness that cost her and mattered to him. She signed the rosters at 2,000 and left the eagle page where she had hidden it. At 2,100, she showered, pinned her wet hair back, and sat on her bunk in a T-shirt and shorts staring at the wall. The coordinates pulsed in the corner of her mind like a heartbeat you feel in a cut. She thought of the photograph and the helmet cam still and the locket's small gleam and the way Reeve had said, trust no one, not even yourself. Her door knocked once, then opened. Reeve stepped in, closed it behind him, and stood with the air of a man who preferred standing. The barracks lights threw neat bars of brightness across the floor. He stood between 2 of them like he'd learned to occupy the space people don't think to look at. Lockdown protocol stays in effect through 2300, he said, voice quiet. Security event on the network. Someone tried a credential that should have died 12 years ago. Falcon Zero, Arya said. His mouth tightened. You say that name again in a hallway, and I'll have to pretend to be angrier than I am. He studied her face the way he had in the yard, like he was listening for something only she could hear. No meetings, no detours, no alone time. If anyone contacts you, you hand it to me. I understand, she said, because that was a correct sentence. She didn't add that the coordinates felt less like an invitation and more like a door someone had left ajar in a burning building. Reeve glanced around the room as if noting exits he already knew, then looked back at her. His expression shifted, nothing soft, but something honest. I'm not your enemy, Captain. I haven't decided who is, she said. Decide faster, he replied. And remember, the most dangerous thing on this base isn't a man with a gun. It's a man with a story he wants to be true. He touched the door handle. Lights out at 2,200. Sleep if you can. When he left, the room grew a size too small. The clock ticked toward 2,200 with the steady indifference of all clocks. Arya lay back, closed her eyes, opened them again. Sleep was a foreign country with no extradition treaty tonight. At 22:15, she dressed in dark fatigues. Training leggings, lightweight boots, a plain hoodie with no unit marks. She braided her hair tight. She didn't arm herself beyond a small blade at her ankle. Guns invite attention at checkpoints. She tucked a flashlight into a pocket and left her phone in its hiding place. If someone traced her tonight, it wouldn't be through the obvious. At 22:30, she left the barracks by the back stairwell that smelled like mop water and old socks. The lockdown meant fewer bodies in motion, more eyes. She walked like she had somewhere boring to be. Walk like you belong. The first rule of sneaking is refusing to look like you are. The base perimeter wore its night face, floodlights, cameras, patrols cutting neat routes through the dark. She took the long way around, past the motor pool, past the shadowed skeleton of the obstacle course, to a service gate used by contractors who came early and left late. The camera above it had a blind spot a meter wide. She slid through it, heartbeat steady, steps soft. At 22:55, she stood just beyond the fence in scrub and shadow. The base's lights behind her like a city she didn't live in anymore. The night smelled like dry earth and creosote, and the faint metallic tang of a storm that wouldn't arrive. She checked the coordinates against the low line of hills. A derelict maintenance hangar set a half-mile out, long roof sagging. Windows punched out like missing teeth. The coordinates didn't name it. They didn't need to. Arya touched the falcon on her forearm. The ink was cool under her skin, the dye frozen midair. They called it fake, she whispered into the dark, a promise to herself, to the woman in the faded photo, to whatever waited out there. Prove them wrong. She set off toward the hangar, boots whispering against sand. The clock rolling over to 2,300 like a loaded chamber clicking into place. The hangar loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against a faint silver of moonlight. From a distance it looked abandoned, roof line sagging. Corrugated metal rusted and pitted. But as Arya drew closer, she saw the signs of recent use. Boot tracks in the dirt, a fresh scrape of metal where the sliding door had been forced open recently, the faint glimmer of a chain lock cut clean. She stopped 20 paces out, crouching low in the brittle grass, letting her eyes adjust. The coordinates had led her here without explanation, but the military precision of the location was too deliberate to be random. Whoever sent the message had chosen a place where sound carried poorly and shadows swallowed movement. The falcon tattoo itched beneath her sleeve, like it knew something she didn't. Arya scanned for movement. The hangar's gaping mouth was dark, but the faintest glow pulsed somewhere deeper inside. She weighed her options: circle wide and enter from the rear, wait and cover to see who else arrived, or walk in and take control of the unknown. She chose control. Her boots made almost no sound on the packed dirt as she crossed the open ground. At the threshold, she let her hand brush the hilt of the knife strapped at her ankle. Small comfort, but better than going in blind. Inside, the smell hit first: oil dust and the faint tang of ozone, the scent of old wiring sparking to life. The glow came from a single portable lamp set on a crate in the center of the cavernous space. Its light revealed a scattering of footprints in the dust and a metal table with something laid out on it, covered by a canvas sheet. She didn't step closer. Captain Vance, A voice said from the shadows beyond the lamp. Calm, female, older. You came alone. Good. A figure stepped into the light. She was taller than Arya by a few inches, hair cut short and practical, face marked by deep lines that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with time and places where people tried to kill you. She wore plain fatigues, but her posture screamed soldier. And then Arya saw the tattoo. The same falcon, same size, same dive and sweep of the wings. Who are you? Arya demanded, her voice tight. The woman's eyes softened in a way that felt dangerous. You already know. No, Arya said. I don't. You do, the woman replied, stepping closer until the details of her face were clear. Or you will. My name's Mara Vance, and I'm your sister. The words didn't land all at once. They sank in pieces, heavy and unwelcome. Arya's brain snatched at them, looking for something to reject. That's not possible. I don't have... Mara cut her off. You don't remember. That's not the same thing. Arya's grip on her knife tightened. Explain. Mara studied her for a moment, then reached under the canvas on the table and pulled it back. Beneath lay a stack of old mission folders, their edges frayed, their covers stamped with classifications Arya hadn't seen in years. On top sat a photo. It was the one Reeve had shown her in the SCIF. But in this version, the image was clearer, sharper, and it wasn't cropped. Standing just out of frame in the one Reeve had was Mara, a younger version of her, hand resting lightly on Arya's shoulder. Except the date on the corner made no sense. 12 years ago. I was part of Falcon Zero, Mara said. So, were you? We were the last two in. We both took the mark. We swore the oath. She reached up and tapped her own tattoo. But when it all went bad, we had a choice. Burn everything or let them burn us. I made sure you were pulled out. I made sure you forgot. Arya shook her head, as if the motion could scatter the words. If this is true, why now? Why here? Mara's gaze hardened. Because the people who killed Falcon Zero know you're alive. And if they get to you before you remember, they'll make sure you don't remember anything at all. A sound broke the tension. A soft crunch outside, the unmistakable rhythm of boots on dirt. More than one pair. Mara moved fast, reaching under the table and pulling out a compact SMG. Too late, she muttered. The hangar door groaned open wider, and figures spilled in. Half a dozen men in mismatched tactical gear. Weapons already up. Their formation wasn't military, but they moved like they practiced together. Arya slid into a crouch, her knife useless at this distance. She scanned for an opening. There wasn't one. And then another figure stepped through the gap in the door, and her stomach dropped. Kane. He wasn't in uniform. Black tactical vest, sidearm holstered low, expression smug in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. Told you she was worth tracking, he said to no one in particular. Didn't think she'd bring a friend. Kane, Arya said, her voice sharp with disbelief and anger. What the hell is this? He smiled thinly. Nothing personal, Captain. You're just carrying a story people are willing to pay for. And I'm in the business of selling. One of the men to his left shifted his stance, weapon angled toward Mara. Arya's instincts took over. She moved, not toward Kane, but toward the nearest stack of crates, diving behind them as the first shot cracked through the hangar. The space erupted into chaos. Mara returned fire, her SMG barking in tight bursts. One mercenary dropped. Another stumbled back, clutching his arm. Kane shouted orders, trying to corral his men, but the hangar's open layout turned the fight into a jagged whirl of movement and noise. Arya ducked low and moved along the shadowed wall, scanning for anything she could use. Her hand closed on a length of rusted pipe, heavy and solid. She gripped it like a bat and waited for her moment. A mercenary broke from cover, angling toward Mara's flank. Arya stepped out and swung, the pipe catching him square across the helmet. He went down hard, his rifle clattering across the concrete. She scooped it up and slid into cover beside Mara. You're either very brave or very stupid, Mara said, not taking her eyes off the advancing line. Family trait, apparently. Arya shot back. They fought in sync without speaking. Mara laying down suppression, Arya picking off the gaps. Two more of Kane's men fell back, dragging a wounded third with them. Kane's expression shifted from smug to calculating. He barked something Arya didn't catch, and the remaining mercenaries began to retreat toward the door. "This isn't over," Kane called, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Enjoy the reunion while it lasts." And then they were gone, swallowed by the dark outside. The hangar fell silent except for the hiss of Mara's breathing and the faint metallic ping of cooling gun barrels. Arya lowered her rifle. "You gonna tell me what that was about?" Mara shook her head. "Not here. Not now. We need to move before they circle back with more." She grabbed a stack of folders, slid them into a pack, and slung it over her shoulder. "Where?" Arya asked. "To someone who can keep us alive," Mara said, already heading for the rear exit. Arya hesitated for half a second, glancing toward the open front of the hangar. The base was somewhere beyond those hills, and Reeve was probably still awake, waiting for her to come back. But the falcon on her arm burned like it knew the answer before she did. She followed Mara into the night. The walk back to base was silent. Mara led the way, sticking to low ground, weaving through scrub and shadow. The air still carried the metallic tang of spent rounds from a firefight in the hangar. Arya's adrenaline had ebbed into a cold, humming awareness, the kind that meant danger wasn't over, just waiting. They slipped through the service gate's blind spot, without a word. The motor pool's hulking shapes offered cover until they reached a maintenance corridor lit by buzzing fluorescence. Arya could feel the shift as they neared the admin wing. More cameras, fewer places to vanish. Two MPs rounded the corner ahead. Mara's hand twitched toward her weapon, but Arya stepped forward first. "Captain Arya Vance," she said clearly, returning from field assessment. The MPs hesitated, then straightened when Colonel Reeve appeared behind them. His eyes flicked from Arya to Mara and narrowed. "Inside. Now." He walked them to a secure briefing room, a smaller SCIF than the one Arya had seen before. The door locked with a muted click. Inside, the light was cold, the table bare except for a slim black folder. Reeve didn't sit. "Tell me what happened." Arya's voice was steady. "Mercenaries. 6 of them. Kane was with them." Mara leaned against the wall. "Not amateurs. They move like a trained crew, just not military. Someone hired them." Reeve's jaw worked. "You were supposed to stay on base, Captain." "I followed the coordinates from the message," Arya said evenly. "If I hadn't, Mara would be in their hands." Reeve shot Mara a look that was half warning, half something else. "You knew they'd come." "I suspected," Mara said, "but I didn't expect Kane." "That makes 2 of us," Reeve muttered. He opened the folder and pulled out a chain of custody form. "Everything you took from the hangar, put it here." Mara slid a canvas pack onto the table. Inside were weather mission folders stamped with high classification markings, and a clearer version of the team photo Reeve had shown Arya. This time, the image wasn't cropped. Mara was in it, her hand on a younger Arya's shoulder. Reeve didn't react to the photo. He logged each item with meticulous strokes of his pen, then pushed the form toward Mara. "Sign." She did, her signature sharp and fast. Arya noticed Reeve's hand linger on the top folder for a moment before he sealed the pack in a hard case. "Intelligence will take it from here," he said. "It's going into deep storage." "Out of reach," Mara said flatly. "That won't stop whoever's hunting us." "Maybe not," Reeve admitted, "but it buys time." Arya crossed her arms. "What about Kane?" "He's being reassigned," Reeve said. "Somewhere far from here. If he's dirty, he'll try to reestablish contact with whoever sent him. If he's just greedy, he'll fade. Or," Mara said, "he'll panic." Reeve looked between them. "Then we'll deal with that, too." The air in the room thickened with unspoken things. Arya felt the weight of the falcon on her forearm, the way it seemed to bind her to both of them, whether she wanted it or not. "You're still not telling me everything," Arya said. Reeve's gaze sharpened. "Not yet. The less you know, the harder you are to compromise. That's not how trust works." "It's exactly how survival works," Reeve countered. Before Arya could reply, the intercom buzzed. "Sir," a voice crackled, "we just had another intrusion on Captain Vance's terminal." No traceable origin. Same signature as the last message. Aria's pulse kicked. What did it say? No text this time, the voice said. Just a falcon symbol. Reeve cut the channel and exhaled through his nose. They're not just watching. They're letting us know they can get in. Mara's mouth curved in a humorless smile. Feels like an invitation. It's bait, Reeve said. And right now we're not biting. He turned back to Arya. From this point forward, you stay on schedule. No unsanctioned movements, no private meetings. If you're contacted again, it goes through me. Arya bristled. You can't sideline me in my own story. I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to finish it, Reeve said. Can you live with that? She didn't answer. Mara pushed off the wall. What about me? You disappear, Reeve said. I'll put you somewhere no one on this base will know to look. That's temporary, Mara warned. Everything is, Reeve replied. For a long moment, the three of them stood in a triangle of shared history none of them fully understood or trusted. Arya's eyes went to the photos still in the pack. She could almost feel the grit of the ruin in that picture, hear the static of the comms, smell the smoke. Reeve broke the silence. We're done here. Mara, Hull will escort you to a billet that doesn't exist. Captain Racktime. If Kane approaches you again, you walk away. Say 3 words on the record, then keep moving. Mara stepped closer to Arya before leaving. Her fingers brushed Arya's sleeve, finding the tattoo beneath. Wear it well, she murmured. The words landed in Arya's bones like an echo she'd heard before but couldn't place. I will, she said quietly. Reeve opened the door. A plain-faced sergeant was waiting for Mara. She followed without looking back. Reeve walked with Arya to the corridor where their paths split. Trust no one, he said. Not even myself, she replied, and saw the acknowledgement in his eyes. Her quarters felt too quiet when she shut the door. She didn't bother removing her boots, just sat on the edge of her bunk staring at the dark terminal. No more messages had come, but she could feel the presence behind the screen, patient and deliberate. On the nightstand, she laid the cap Mara had given her at the hangar, the brim frayed, the logo faded. She didn't know why she kept touching it, only that it anchored her to something real. When she finally lay back, she kept the light on. Sleep came in shallow, uneasy pools, broken by the image of Falcon diving and never touching the ground. The base looked different at night. It wasn't just the shadows. It was the way sound seemed to change shape, how the echo of boots on concrete carried differently when the barracks windows glowed with only the dimmest security lights. Arya moved like someone running an errand she didn't want to admit to. No rifle slung across her back, no tactical vest, just dark fatigues and a knife at her ankle. She left through the rear stairwell, slipping past a night shift in the motor pool. When gnawed, they didn't bother to return. The coordinates from her terminal earlier still pulsed in her head. Even after Reeve's warning, she couldn't shake the pull. If she ignored them, she might never know who was really behind all this. And if she went, she might find the answer Reeve clearly didn't want her to have yet. The location was only half a mile from the perimeter, a derelict hangar left over from a decade-old expansion plan that never happened. She approached it from the east, staying in the lee of a low ridge. The wind picked up just enough to cover the sound of her boots. From 100 yards out, she could see the faint glow of light spilling through the hangar's broken windows. Her hand found the hilt of her knife. She wasn't walking into that light without knowing what else was in there. She circled wide, scanning for movement, but the night was still. No guards, no vehicles, just the sound of the wind catching in the corrugated roof. Slipping inside, she found the source of the glow, a single portable lamp on a crate in the center of the hangar. Its light caught on dust motes drifting in the air and threw long, sharp shadows against the metal walls. And in the shadows stood a woman. She stepped forward into the light, older than Arya by maybe a decade. Her hair cut short, her face a roadmap of lines carved by hard choices. She wore plain fatigues and combat boots worn soft with use. But what caught Arya's attention was the ink on her forearm. The same falcon, identical down to the curve of its wing. You came alone, the woman said. Her voice was low, rough with years of command. Good. Arya didn't move closer. Who are you? The woman's gaze softened, just slightly. Mara Vance. Your sister. The words hung between them, heavy and wrong. That's not possible, Arya said, shaking her head. I don't have... You don't remember, Mara interrupted. That's not the same thing. Arya's grip tightened on the knife. Explain. Mara took another step forward, into the full wash of the lamp. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Not a mirror image, but the same sharp eyes, the same stubborn set to the mouth. She carried herself like a soldier who'd been the last one standing too many times. We both served in Falcon Zero, Mara said. The tattoo wasn't decoration, it was an oath. When the last mission went bad, we had to make a choice. I made sure you walked away. I made sure you forgot. Arya stared at her. Forgot how? There are ways, Mara said. None of them clean. Before Arya could push for more, a noise cut through the space. A muffled scuff, too heavy to be a rat. Then another. Mara's head snapped toward the hangar door. They found us. Arya dropped into a crouch just as the door screeched open wider, letting in a flood of cold night air. Figures spilled in, half a dozen, their shapes dark against the moonlight. Their gear was mismatched but practical, weapons already raised. At their center, wearing black tactical kit and a satisfied grin, was Kane. Captain, he said, like they were sharing a joke. You have a talent for being exactly where I need you to be. Arya's knife felt suddenly small in her hand. What the hell are you doing, Kane? Filling in the blanks, he said. There's a market for the truth about Falcon Zero. And you, well, you're worth more than I thought. Especially now that I know you come with family. He gestured, and two of his men advanced. Rifles up, Mara was already moving. She ducked behind the crate, coming up with a compact SMG that must have been hidden beneath the canvas. The first burst sent one mercenary stumbling back. The second dropped into cover. Arya sprinted sideways, keeping low, searching for anything heavier than her knife. A crate splintered nearby under gunfire, and she dove behind it, breath tight in her chest. Still time to make this easy. Kane called, Come out, both of you, and I might even keep you breathing long enough to hear the offer. Not interested, Mara shouted back, and sent another burst toward the door. Arya spotted a downed rifle just beyond a toppled barrel. She lunged for it, sliding on the dusty floor, fingers closing around the grip. The magazine was still in. She racked the charging handle, the sound crisp in the chaos. She dropped beside Mara, returning fire at the advancing shapes. Their coordination wasn't military tight, but it was enough to keep pressure on. They were trying to push the sisters toward the far wall, cut off their exits. Mara leaned toward her. We break left on my mark. Arya nodded. 3 seconds later, Mara threw a flashbang from somewhere inside her jacket. The detonation turned the hangar into a burst of white light and ringing silence. They moved, left fast, keeping low, Arya firing short, control burst to keep the mercs pinned. Kane shouted something, voice distorted to the ringing, but they didn't look back. A side door loomed ahead. Mara slammed into it with her shoulder, the frame giving way under the force. Cold night air rushed in. They didn't stop moving until they were 50 yards out, ducking into the cover of a low drainage channel. The gunfire from the hangar faded behind them, replaced by the far-off shouts of Kane's men regrouping. Arya's chest heaved. We're not going to outrun them forever. We don't have to, Mara said. We just have to get somewhere they won't follow. Like where? Mara gave a small, grim smile. Back to someone who still remembers why the mark matters. Arya's mind went a reeve. You trust him? I trust that he wants you alive, Mara said. And right now that's enough. They moved along the drainage channel until the base perimeter lights came into view. From this angle, the fence was screened by scrub and a low-maintenance shed. Mara pointed. That's our way in. They reached the shed without drawing attention. Mara produced a set of small cutters from her jacket pocket, tools far too specialized for coincidence. Within minutes, they'd slipped back through the fence and into the grid of shadowed service roads. Mara slowed as they neared the admin wing. We split here. If we walk in together, every camera will have us on the same frame. Arya hesitated. When will I see you again? Mara glanced down at Arya's covered forearm. Sooner than you think. The mark has a way of pulling its own together. Then she was gone, melting into the dark between buildings. Arya took the long way back to her quarters, her senses stretched taut. When she finally shut the door behind her, the quiet was almost a shock. She leaned against the metal, eyes closed, the memory of Kane's grin still burning in her mind. Her terminal pinged. She froze. The screen lit with single line of text. Birds don't fake their bones. No sender. No trace. Just those words, before the message vanished as if it had never been there. The message still glowed in Arya's mind long after it had vanished from the screen. Birds don't fake their bones. She sat on the edge of her bunk, boots still on, trying to decide whether to wake Reeve or keep this one to herself. The last 48 hours have been a chain of decisions like that, choosing which truths to show, which to bury. Every time she chose wrong, someone got closer to killing her. A knock broke the quiet. 3 raps, sharp and deliberate. Captain, Reeve's voice said through the door. She opened it. His face was unreadable, but his eyes went immediately to the terminal. You got something. She nodded. Gone now. Same style as before. This time it was a sentence. Reeve stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Let me guess. About birds. Arya blinked. You've seen it? Years ago, he said. Same phrasing. It's a code phrase used inside Falcon Zero. Meant one thing. Someone on the inside has verified you. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Then whoever's sending them knows exactly who you are. Reeve finished. Before she could press further, his comm unit buzzed. He listened for a moment, jaw tightening. We've got movement. Kane's not in his quarters. And his ID pinged at the perimeter 2 minutes ago. Adrenaline kicked back into Arya's veins. He's leaving. Or meeting someone, Reeve said. Either way, you're coming with me. They moved fast through the back corridors, bypassing the main gates. Reeve carried his sidearm low, the way someone does when they're expecting trouble, but not panic. Arya matched his pace, knife strapped at her ankle, eyes scanning for shadows that didn't belong. They found Kane at the motor pool. He was loading a duffel into the back of an unmarked utility vehicle, a sidearm visible at his hip. His head snapped up at the sound of their boots on concrete. Well, he said, lips curling, look who decided to see me off. Reeve's voice was ice. Step away from the vehicle, Sergeant. Kane laughed once, low and ugly. You think you can lock this place down forever? The truth's worth more than your precious secrecy, and I'm done letting you hoard it. This isn't about truth, Arya said, stepping forward. It's about you making yourself important in a story you barely understand. Kane's eyes flicked to her, and for the first time she saw something like envy under the arrogance. You don't get it, Captain. You are the story, the missing piece. And people out there will pay to know how you survived when Falcon Zero didn't. Maybe I don't even know the answer. Arya shot back. That's the beauty, Kane said. They'll pay whether you know or not. Reeve's voice sharpened. Last chance. Drop the bag. Kane's hand twitched toward his weapon. Arya didn't think. She moved. 3 fast steps, knock his arm wide as Reeve closed in from the other side. The sidearm clattered across the concrete, Kane swearing as Reeve drove him against the side of the vehicle. By the time the MPs arrived, Kane's wrists were zip-tied, his smirk gone. Reeve didn't look at him again, just told the MPs, secure him until I give orders. As they hauled him away, Kane twisted his head toward Arya. You think locking me up changes anything? The mark on your arm is a target, Captain, and they're already aiming. Reeve didn't speak until they were back in his office. The door locked with a quiet click, the white noise generator humming to life. You understand what this means now, he said. That Kane's working for someone who's already inside Falcon Zero's shadow network. Arya asked. Reeve nodded. And that the circle is smaller than we thought. If they're willing to pull them off base and send mercs into my backyard, then whatever's in your head, or whatever was, matters more than we realized. Arya leaned forward. Then stop holding back and tell me all of it. For a moment he didn't answer. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a folder older than either of them had any right to be dealing with. Inside was a single sheet of paper, creased and faded. It was a roster. Falcon 0. 13 names. 2 of them were hers. One was Vance, Mara. The other, Vance, Arya. Same rank. Same blood type. Same ID photo. Hers. But with the hair shorter, the scar under her brow fresher. You weren't just in Falcon 0, Reeve said. You were its youngest member. You and Mara were recruited together. You were different. No official record until you were placed. No family listed except each other. And then, on the last op, you went missing. Mara came back without you and swore she'd burned your trail. We thought she had. Arya's voice was low. Then how am I here now? Reeve shook his head. If Mara knows, she hasn't told me. But if a phrase is coming through, birds don't fake their bones. Someone else in the unit is alive. And they've marked you as genuine. The weight of it settled in Arya's chest. She'd spent her whole career building herself into someone defined by skill, not history. Now she was learning her history was a weapon in someone else's hands. Then we find them, she said, before they find me again. The search started that night. Reeve put Mara in a secure location on the far side of the base, beyond the reach of Kane's allies. Intelligence began combing comm logs, tracing the intrusions on Arya's terminal. By morning, they had something, a bounce pattern too clean to be random, originating from a relay station 30 miles away. Whoever it was had been operating close enough to touch them if they wanted. Reeve called it in. We move tonight, he told Arya. Quick, clean, in and out. They rolled out under cover of darkness. 2 unmarked vehicles, for operators besides Reeve and Arya. The relay station sat on a bluff overlooking a dry riverbed. Its lights dead, its fence cut in 2 places. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old electronics. Banks of equipment hummed faintly in the dark. And on the far wall, scrawled in black paint, was the Falcon symbol. Arya felt her pulse spike. They moved deeper, clearing each room in silence. The main server bay was empty, except for a small case sitting on the central desk. Reeve opened it. Inside was a single photo, the Falcon 0 team, the one Arya had seen before. But this version had something new. 3 of the faces were crossed out in red ink. The rest, including hers and Mara's, were untouched. A note lay beneath it. The rest are dead. Find U.S. No name. No signature. Reeve looked at her. They're drawing you in. Then it's time we stop waiting for them, Arya said. They returned to base before dawn. Kane was already gone, transferred to a black site holding facility where his smirk wouldn't reach her. Mara met them in the SCIF, her eyes going straight to the photo. They're alive, she whispered. At least some of them. Arya met her gaze. Then we finish this. No more half-truths. No more shadows. Reeve looked between them, the decision settling on his shoulders. Then we go hunting. But understand this. Once we start, we can't stop. And when we find them, the world you think you know will be over. Arya rolled her sleeve back, exposing the Falcon tattoo. For the first time, she didn't feel the urge to hide it. It was over the moment they called it fake, she said. Now we prove it's real. The 3 of them stood there, the hum of the generator filling the room. Outside, the base carried on like nothing had changed. Inside, they had just drawn the final line in a war that officially didn't exist. Somewhere out there, the rest of Falcon 0 was waiting. And this time, Arya was going to find them first. If you like this story, please subscribe to support this channel.